guess what I'm saying is, right, and you've perfectly actually laid out the dichotomy here. It is a fact, obviously, that black people disproportionately commit crime in this country. No one's arguing that. But you either believe that that is due to a complex intersection of social, economic, and like leftover effects from previous inequalities, or you believe that that is an inherent trait to the race.
No, I don't, because they weren't that way in the 1940s and 50s. Black America was one of the most peaceful, flourishing, fastest growing economically communities in the country. It's not genetic. You're trying to point something on me that I don't believe. Instead,
but then
Black
you do
America,
believe that it's not genetic, so you do think CRT is correct.
Hold on a second. In the 1940s and 1950s, Black America was prosperous and was on pace to be richer and wealthier than white America. More dads were staying with the women that they were with. There was monogamy. What changed?
You're supporting my argument.
No, hold on. But answer the question. What changed? Did America get more racist since 1950?
I would argue there were more racist policies passed. There were more policies dedicated to lining off those communities and pushing them into poor housing and poor schools.
Wait a second. In the 1950s, Jackie Robinson had not even broken the color barrier. We had Jim Crow laws. We hadn't passed the Civil Rights Act, and we hadn't passed the Voting Rights Act. Yet blacks were better in the 1950s per capita than they are today. So we have become less racist. We've passed more anti-racist laws and given more stuff, and blacks are worse than they were 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Why?
So you're equating here institutional and social racism. Social racism was certainly worse in the 1950s, I'm sure everyone would agree, but institutional racism occurs when policies are passed against people.
Come on.
Which can increase over time, and it did.
You're not being intellectually honest, you know that. There was black-only drinking fountains in the 1950s. We don't have those anymore. Well, we're bringing it back with, black-only dormitories, but we had, for example, in the antebellum South in the 1950s, we had white-only communities, white by law. We got rid of that with the Civil Rights Act. But it didn't, unfortunately, we look around, the numbers speak for themselves. Black youth are less likely to have fathers. They're not doing as well as far as economically. They commit more crime. So something changed. And our argument is what changed is three things. Number one, the imposition of the Great Society Project by Lyndon Baines Johnson of spending $30 trillion since 1960s on Section 8 housing, on welfare, on, all sorts where, as I said, that young black women married the government and they divorced young black men. And then we also have had, as Thomas Sowell and as Clarence Thomas would say, the soft bigotry of low expectations. And we have been afraid to get to the root of the issue or even speak about it because we don't want to be called a racist.
So what is imposing those low expectations?
Part of it is like white academic culture. I'll give you an example. I'm not saying you believe this, but Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, has come out and said having an ID to vote is racist. That is code for saying black people are too dumb to get a voter ID.
You're doing it again. You're simplifying a very nuanced, complex argument from the real people who are making it.
Is voter ID racist?
Obviously not, Charlie.
Okay, all right.
Do you want to know where the argument comes from? I can eloquently tell you.
Eloquently tell me why voter ID is racist.
Great.
Or whatever.
Certain policies in southern states were proposed that would, I think the quote from the person who decided the case was, with surgical precision, target the times where black people were voting and make it illegal or harder for them to get that, to come at that time. And then they were targeting the type of ID that black voters had and making that specific type of ID illegal. That is racist.
Perfectly fair. How does that impact today, saying that every citizen, if you need an ID to vote, just that aside, why is it racist?
Because we have to have, obviously humans are making those decisions, right? And so if there is still institutional racism and people in power that are racist, we can't trust those institutions to make those.
I gotta admit, Charlie Kirk has a good grift. And that grift is to go to these colleges and talk to people that he know that more than likely he can win the majority of his debates. And even in this debate, I don't think that he actually won, but he was able to deflect the young lady, speak fast, so that she got off point, and that she was lacking a certain amount of information that was actually the true root of the problem. Now, she was right in her first leaning towards how he's conflicting or confligating, I think is the right word, social racism and economic racism. And that in itself would explain why there is a difference in the black American dichotomy right now. Is dichotomy the right word? I don't even think that's the right word, but in the black world, state of being right now. So if I was there, or if someone of my ilk was there, having this debate with Charlie Kirk, the whole argument would have been shut down well before they got into voter ID, which is his deflection. When he is comparing the economic and family structure of black people in the 1950s compared to the economic and family structures of black people in today's world, there are economic racism that was put in place in those 1940s and 50s that destroyed the black family, especially from 1950. Here's the thing. What Charlie Kirk is not being, and what that young lady did not say, and what he's not being honest about, is the fact that we all know that those black communities that were growing, that were thriving, were all either burnt down, flooded out, and in the 1950s, they were constructed out. And I'll explain. You see, the first thing that you have to realize is that during those time frames to which he is speaking of, there was the social racism that said that black people couldn't eat here, couldn't ride here, couldn't drink here, couldn't do all these different things within the greater white community. So black people were relegated to only experiencing some joys of life and economic growth only within the black community. So black businesses were able to thrive because black people could not go and spend their money in most white businesses. So black people couldn't go to a black restaurant. A white restaurant. They couldn't ride on a white bus, right? They couldn't go to places that were white owned, especially in the South, because they were relegated just to black businesses. And not that that's a bad thing. I really think we didn't go back to that, but supporting black businesses, but we couldn't go. And when you can't go and you have only one option, then that one option leads you to just supporting the businesses in your community that you can only support. So of course, the black family stayed together more. The black family supported other black businesses more. Black families were given jobs by black businesses. So the dollar in the black community did circulate more because we were forced and confined in a prison without walls. That was the reason why you had that. Now, what happened in the 1950s that was the final nail in the coffin for the majority of black communities that were thriving? And that is the highway bill, the federal highway bill, which destroyed multiple black communities throughout America. There's a community, I forgot the name of it, down in Miami that was completely destroyed by I-95 going straight through it, causing all types of congestion and taking people's land and taking people's business. There was when I think it's 64, that goes down, no, 85, that goes through Montgomery, Alabama. Instead of going through unused land, they decided to go straight through a black town and destroy that black town that was thriving on the outskirts of Montgomery. And these types of situations can be found all over America, where the highway system purposely was drawn so that it would disrupt the growth of black economics and destroy black families and cause separation of the community. So from the 1950s, we see the beginning of the drop of black business and black economics while still existing in a socially racist society. Now, when he talks about Lyndon B. Johnson and his great society and all that sorts of thing, what he is not saying is that the overwhelming majority of people, even to this day, who are on Section 8 and who are on welfare are white people, not black people. White people are on welfare more as far as populace. Now, when we look at the statistic of percentage, yes, you can say black people are, well, it is that black people are percentage-wise more on welfare and Section 8, but number-wise, it wasn't for the benefit of black people. It was for the benefit of poor white people. That was the purpose of that program. And just as poor black people, and he said women married to the government, the same thing happened in white society. So don't try to make it into a black thing. And just as today you have more white people who are getting divorces and breaking up families, you have the same situation going on that you have in the black community. So this is not a black thing. And one of the other parts they say that black people commit more crimes, he is saying that we inherently do that because of our genetics and not because of anything else that occurs. He's just trying to slip his way out of it. But when you actually look at the exoneration project, what do you see? You see that 53% of the exonerations for murder are of people of color, or of black men. Black men are exonerated from murder more so than anybody else, which means that they were falsely accused and falsely imprisoned, breaking up families even more so. And when we see the bills that was done under President Clinton, we see that black incarceration went up even more so with the privatization of prisons. And many of them were falsely imprisoned, falsely accused. So it is a systemic racism that is still social, but the economic damage was done in the 1950s and 60s, and so that it would break up the black family. And that is what he is not paying attention to. Now, I am not saying that the government needs to step in and fix this issue. What I'm saying is that black people need to fix this issue for ourselves. That we, as a people, need to do as much shopping as we possibly can with black businesses. That we need to service more black businesses. And at the same time, I am saying that black businesses need to up their game and learn how to do business properly and have better customer service and serve better products. That is what we need to do as a people to ensure our own selves. So what do you guys think? Please let me know in the comments. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey. Good